The Salem Witch Trials have always intrigued me. There's such a mixture of mystery and confusion that no one really knows what happened other than the facts, which is why I chose this as my topic. So much could have happened. I mean, no one can argue with the facts, right? A total of 25 innocent men, women, and children were killed. Over 200 people were jailed for witchcraft, and very few of them made it out alive if they were sent to trial. Hundreds of lives were changed by these proceedings. They did, however, have humble beginnings. It all started with a single family making a play for power. The Salem witch crisis was set during the cold years of 1692 and 1693. The combined stress of typical 17th century life, and especially with the recent pox outbreak, everyone was tense. Salem Village during 1692 was a box of tinder waiting for a lit match, and a little girl's call that a witch was tormenting her was more than enough for Salem to become an inferno. Throughout the witchcraft trials, the Putnam family was the star of the show. Everyone who accused someone else of being a witch was either related to the Putnam family or was a friend of the Putnam family. The family of the accusers, the Putnams, were related to the Reverend of Salem, a man who frequently preached controversial messages and created many enemies in Salem. He was constantly paranoid about others trying to lash out at him. The first to fall ill was his daughter, Elizabeth, and Abigail Williams, his niece. He was desperate to find out what was wrong with them, so he sent for doctors who said the girls were bewitched. However, the doctors today have found that what the girls had was probably a combination of asthma and convulsive ergotism. The first trial belonged to Bridget Bishop, a lady that had been accused and found innocent of witchcraft 12 years prior. After her, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were hung. The girls were starting to get giddy as they realized that no one would question what they said. Their next victim, Rebecca Nurse, was an upstanding citizen and wife, but these facts were somehow forgotten when the girls pointed their fingers. The most shocking death was that of George Burroughs, a minister that didn't even live in Salem anymore. He had moved to Maine several years before the witchcraft trials, but still, he was sentenced to death. During the trials, those were at the bottom of the social ladder. The girls that catered to everyone's needs soon found themselves at the top. They abused this newfound power as they found themselves the centerpiece of the accusations. This power gave them a bit of an egotistical head, and they didn't care that life was being lost constantly because of their decisions. The only evidence required to condemn someone to death was called spectral evidence. This type of evidence could only be seen by the victim, and as you can imagine, wasn't very reliable. The use of spectral evidence was only stopped when Governor Phipps's wife was accused of witchcraft. By then, the governor was ready to put a stop to the hangings. The Salem witchcraft trials had several oddities, the first one being the sizable pool of witches. Over 200 people were jailed. The closest witch hunt to this size only tried 11 people. It was odd that the court of Salem even heard the girls. Women were not allowed to testify in court, let alone children. The trials were also usually held in private, and the offenders had someone to help defend them, like a modern-day lawyer. But the Salem witch trials were held in public, and the offenders had to defend themselves with no help. The best example of this is Dorcas Good, daughter of Sarah Good, who was accused of being a witch at the tender age of 4. She was expected to defend herself when she could barely speak at all. The last oddity had to do with the accused. All of the accused witches had something to do with the Putnam family, but in a bad way. They had slighted the Putnams, had disagreed with them, humiliated them in some form, which begs the question, how did the Putnams have all the power? The girls were constantly in the center of attention, a place they were not used to being. Women were taught to be quiet, not loud. However, when the witch trial started, they had everyone's attention. However, at the end, a couple girls came forward and apologized for their part in ending the lives of so many people. One of the girls even said in her diaries that they thought it was a game at first. But as they got older, they realized so many people had lost their lives because of this game. In conclusion, the Salem witch trials were fishy, to say the least. Many of the supposed witches were upstanding members of the community, but for some reason this fact disappeared when the girls started pointing their fingers. 200 people were jailed, 20 were killed, and 4 died in prison. A paranoid reverend saw the opportunity to finally do in those that disagreed with him and manipulated innocent girls into doing his dirty work. He twisted their illnesses into a way to better his life and ruined the lives of a couple hundred people in the process. All the facts seem to point towards the Putnams as the source of the witch trials. Even though it might have started out as a power play, it certainly did go wrong.